GM, everybody. Hope you can all hear me. Hope you're having a great day and you have had an amazing weekend. We are going straight back in for another day of workshops. I am going to quickly invite our speaker for today, Zane. And in the meantime, as I said, GM, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you've had an amazing weekend. And yeah, just quickly going to go through a couple of bits. As always, a reminder, we are going to have an idea submission at the end of this week, which means hopefully once this week's over, once all the workshops have all been done, you've had the chance to go through them, you will be able to, hey Zane, you will be able to submit the thing that you would be working on for the remaining 2 weeks of the hackathon. This is crucial for us. It's crucial for all the partners as well, because it means we will then know what you're planning on to build, and we will then be able to provide you adequate support for the remainder of the program and make sure that the idea you have in your mind is, one, feasible, and two, you have all the resources needed to fulfill it. We will help with team formations as well, and point you to the direction of other people, like-minded people that we'll be looking for someone to develop things with. As I said, as a reminder, showing you quickly the link. It's going to pop up on the screen, bottom left side. This is the link to the idea form that you are expected to submit at the end of this week. For today, we have an interesting workshop from Spectral. It's going to be on on-chain agents. We have Zane here for the next hour, who will be leading this. Hey, Zane, how are you doing?
Hey, everyone. Yeah, really good. Excited to be here.
Likewise, everyone, please make sure to be using the chat section and the question section for the next hour in order to communicate your questions with Zane, and he will make sure to come back to them. But yeah, over to you, Zane. Feel free to take it away.
Nice. Yeah. And yeah, I'll try to monitor chat as we go along, and I'll probably have some questions for everyone as we go. But yeah, thank you, everybody, for being here and for having us. Just as that was brought up that you're picking project ideas soon. I'm pretty excited to see what everyone is going to build. And yeah, maybe it'll be about on-chain agents. So let's take a look. If at any time, like throughout the presentation, if audio is bad or video, just let me know. We can fix that. So yeah, agentic systems on-chain. The agenda will do just like a quick one slide introduction on Spectral, what we're building, who I am, and then go to the most important parts: why agents, how you might build them during the hackathon if you think this is an interesting problem, and some of the future work that we'll see after. So Spectral has been around for like 3 years now. And initially when we started, we were focused on credit scoring models. So we had these protocols, Maker, Aave, and Compound come up, and huge improvement in the way people borrow and lend money. Certainly, on-chain, that was a big development. And, one piece that we saw was missing there was like some form of improving capital efficiency. So when you go to these protocols, the same borrower who may have been, liquidated a number of times and has like maintained unhealthy lending positions would get the same rate as someone who has borrowed a number of times, has a very healthy position. And we didn't really think it should be like that. We think there's some improvement there. So the goals were, a score for these new protocols, but also relative to credit scores that exist, certainly in the United States and in many other countries. Like, the scores are not great for many people. They have a material impact on your life, and many times you might get an incorrect score. You might, be scored on data that's not appropriate, and you have little recourse in those situations. So score for the new protocol is a better score, but more important was this idea of a network. So instead of, when you want a loan, just coming and getting my Zane score, which, why would you trust that? Who knows? You could get scores from a number of different modelers who have come to this idea independently. So their own approach for modeling it, their own data, and then you're in a much better position. If you have 10 scores on a borrower's creditworthiness, that's much better than one centralized score. So we launched that last year and did this like Kaggle style ML competition, which I know at least a few people in the hackathon participated in. So hi to you all again. And then the winning models were consumed publicly. So there was this forward testing window, and we had a leaderboard, and it was really, really fun to see. And the next iteration of that is this generalization. So, there's nothing really unique to credit scoring about that. network of modelers approaches. We could do that for any problem. And that's what we've been doing this year, is we started working with LLMs first for Solidity code generation, which, as you know, is like a huge part of the blockchain ecosystem, but a lot of developer tooling is still far behind, what we have for people that write Python and JavaScript. So we built this kind of Solidity Copilot, pulled a ton of contracts from the chain, fine-tuned a bunch of models, built these big RAG data sets, and we're pretty happy with the results. That's live in the app now. But the kind of conclusion that we arrived on there was, okay, there's some percentage of people that want to write new contracts with a code, but there's a much larger percentage of people that want to interact with these contracts. And so that's where this agent idea really comes in. So why agents? First off, I'd be curious to know, like in chat, when you hear agent, like what does that mean to you? I think this has definitely become, well, it's for sure a buzzword now. It has been for a while, and I think everyone kind of has their different definitions. So yeah, if you have ideas on what you hear when I say agent, type them in the chat. This definition is one that I really like, and it's from this great article by Davide, who works at the Ethereum Foundation. And this article, which is linked here, is a really great read. I would highly recommend that if you're interested in this type of problem. And his definition is a program that interacts with the world. We have some perception, which is really input data. Perceiving the environment, I think, is a great term, like a great way to put that. But we're taking some input data. We have real live data. Processing, you want to maybe, format that. You're adding new things, generating something new, and planning what to do next, and then taking some action. So, that all sounds great, but like this guy on the right here, that kind of sounds familiar. And this is general enough where it's like, oh, this could really be any script by this definition, right? Like input data. That could be like a string we're taking and just not doing anything with. That could be, some API call. This processing the data, that could be string formatting and like a bunch of if-else statements for this prediction and planning. And then taking some action. Well, you could just like print to the console and call it a day, I guess. Like that's technically an action. So I think this is kind of incomplete. And where it becomes, I think, a little bit more clear on what this actually is when we specify that at least part of that program is driven by some model, and in many cases, a language model. When it is a language model, what's really powerful here is this access to a set of tools. And that unlocks a whole new set of functionality for existing models. And this bolded part here, in addition to having the tools, the model needs to have the agency to use them. So agency, like if you were describing a person who has that quality, they'd be proactive. They'd be, taking whatever problem is in front of them into their own hands and setting out to do something about it, which is a great quality, I think, to have as a person, but also something really nice with this system as well. So when we think about it like that, okay, this is more than just some rebranding of the word script. Like there's something new going on here. And when you rely on these models to make tool selections, things get really exciting. You don't have the same exact path for everything. You get new data, you get new paths. It becomes really fun. And at least the first time I saw like this, even in the example, which we'll look at in a second, it's like, oh, wow, this is really powerful stuff. And then like, as you kind of build more complex systems, to see these models really go and make the appropriate tool choice and be able to call that function, it's really, really exciting. And it's not just us that, are thinking about this. So this is from the ChatGPT app, and, GPT 3.5 Turbo is like probably almost 3 years old now. But frankly, it's still one of the best models in the world, like being realistic. A ton of people use it. It's quick, it's cheap. And for many use cases, it works really well. We use it for some tool selection on our app right now in favor of some of these new models because of the speed and reliability that we get from that tool selection. But we can see if we ask some relatively easy question, which like a normal end user might care about, you don't get a response here. And, that makes sense. Like anytime you are training some model, you're going to have this data set. From that, you'll construct training, validation, and testing, but there's some cutoff date to that data, which there's not really anything you can do about. So then how do you solve these real-time problems? What now we're doing, what OpenAI is doing, what a bunch of other teams are doing is this agent approach. So we can see, all right, same question here. What's new is this search 6 sites. So now we say, okay, we need real-time data for something. It looks like we need weather data, then make an appropriate selection from that, and we get something that's really descriptive. So it's really something that for the end user makes a huge difference when working with these models. And like I said, yeah, training data is fixed. So this is another thing that I think is really intuitive when we forget about all this ML and crypto stuff is, would you want to make some decision based on everything you do up to October? In some cases, maybe. Maybe you still like to eat the same thing for lunch or whatever, but in most cases, you want the real-time data. You want to know what's happened since October. And that matters a lot for a lot of these use cases as well. Many of these problems require real-time data. Certainly with blockchain environment, you need to know what's happening the last block, the last day, and right now. And with this new tooling, the models remain fixed. The model's 3 years old. It still solves new problems really well and can adapt to a bunch of new environments. So how do you actually do that? It's quite a bit simpler than I think even that it sounds when you use something like Hugging Face called it guidance, which I'll link that as well. So you can do this with open source models like Llama, and they perform very well. And then OpenAI calls it tool selection. Both of them really work the same. You'll define whatever function it might be. If you're working in Python, this getWeather function might have some API, and you'll return the response there when you specify the location and the unit. Then you'll write a description of the name, the tool, the parameters, and maybe sometimes an example. All of that you can define in the function and just kind of read that into this OpenAI specification as well. And you may have any number of tools. Some of these agents that we've built now are up to 50 tools, and you can go much higher than that as well. There is some limit that OpenAI enforces, but it's quite high. I forget what it is, but dozens of tools, you can still have really efficient selection here. And then what you do is this chat completions API. Maybe some of you have seen this before, but in addition to passing all of the chat history, you also specify these tools. And in some cases, you can use this tool choice as well. Auto is nice because if you have n number of functions available to choose from, you can let the model decide. In cases where you know that you want a certain tool selected, you can also specify that, which is great to be able to have a little more control in some of these cases. And then once we get the response, we'll have this tool calls. And the model also has the option of not choosing any tools, which is really helpful as well. So if you just wanted to write something that didn't require, or you wanted a response that didn't require new input data or any of these tools, the model can respond as normally. And if that's the case, then you wouldn't have anything in this tool calls list. If it is, then we'll iterate through that and then later call the functions. And you can pass them back into the chat history as well. So, okay, great. Case for agents, I think is clear enough. You've seen some of these demos that have nothing to do with blockchains for agent systems. And yeah, I mean, I think it's really exciting. I think people will continue to use this in many areas, but why do this on a blockchain? Why do it anywhere? Is this just because AI and blockchains have been advancing quickly? Not really in my mind. I think there's some really unique features here. The main thing is that, when you're using crypto stuff today in a browser wallet, the functionality is really limited. People talk all the time about the UX of browser wallets and not really liking them, and new ones will pop up and they do effectively the same thing. Maybe there's some tweaks here, like Rainbow versus MetaMask is what I use, and both of them do certain things well. But at the end of the day, that capability is really limited. How are you going to schedule something? Is there any personalization in this? Even notifications, some of them don't have this. So these are all relatively I would say like expected features that you might get in other applications that are missing here. So, as developers, what do we do? Well, you can interact programmatically, and then you can basically do whatever you want. Foundry is an incredibly powerful suite of, I think they call it smart contract development tools. But they also include a bunch of tools to interact with the chain. So if you go in and read Foundry and get comfortable working there, you can really do whatever you want. You can build some scripts that every 5 minutes will check for some event. You can call and deploy contracts. You can do whatever you want, which a lot of people do. But just like writing your own Python script to fetch the weather every day, that's not really feasible or even desirable for most people. Not everyone wants to do this all day. And agents, I think, will really bridge that gap between taking advantage of these tools, which we use and which have a ton of functionality, but making them digestible and attractive for everyday people who don't want to write code. The blockchain as an environment itself for these systems is really powerful as well. Just like we saw in this original, credit scoring idea, is there are these actors called liquidators, and liquidators will check whether a number of borrowers' positions are healthy. If they're unhealthy and able to be liquidated, they'll take this action and receive some compensation for doing that. And I think it'll be similar to agents as well. We'll have some economic incentive built into the action that they take. Everything is composable. We have cryptographic guarantees. And I think the most part of any ML system is the data. And, for my money, I'm not just saying this because this is like Web3 hackathon, but I think the blockchain has become the most exciting data set in the world to me. This never ending stream of blocks, new things are happening every day. It's mostly open source. You have to know how to read certain things if you're working with unverified contracts, but it's fascinating. And, you kind of forget that other industries don't have this huge public data set of real-time data for everything. Something we're very lucky to have. And in addition to that availability, we have this consensus mechanism. So all of the validators have decided, okay, yes, this is the state. We can trust that when we're doing anything with that data, which is really, again, something we're very, very fortunate to have. All right, I shared the Foundry book in chat. There's a lot there, and it's like kind of a difficult learning curve. But once you get familiar with the syntax, then it becomes really, really powerful. Cast is what you'll use to create new wallets, send transactions, and interact with the chain. And then Forge is used to deploy new contracts and test, things like that. Okay, so maybe a word of caution on when and when not to build with an LLM. The question that I think we find ourselves asking often is, okay, should the LLM be involved here? The great case with blockchain work is when you want to listen to every new block, say on Base, you're going to have something every 2 seconds. So if you can avoid it, you don't really want the LLM involved there, because even for a simple query, the time to the end of the response can be quite long, and you may not get everything done in that 2 second realm. So it's really about picking and choosing where this is involved. On problem formulation, I think for your projects and just in general, when you're picking what to build, it's important to kind of think about, okay, if new models were released next week, do you expect this problem to be solved or it to be improved? The really nice thing about this agent workflow is that when you're building this system around the individual models themselves, you can leverage new functionality when it comes out. So the new OpenAI models come out relatively quickly. You can integrate those and start testing here. And it's not something that you'll see on Twitter all the time. It's like, oh, 1 million startups have been killed by this new model. You avoid that situation. And same thing about, should the LLM even be here? If a solution exists without the LLM, what does that do well? What are you really trying to solve there? And trying to solve everything at once, just when you're trying to solve whatever problem you're encountering in your life, doing everything at once maybe isn't the best option. So having these well-defined steps of, okay, solve problem 1, move on, solve problem 2, that helps a lot. And yeah, just again, to reiterate on this tool selection, it's incredibly powerful and really exciting to see, but it's also, you're kind of giving up a lot of control on the actual system. So yeah, be cautious of that. Building some testing into this helps a lot, and will give you a much better idea of what you can expect with the system. Yeah, so caching of the API calls, it really depends on the data that you're accessing. So if it's like on-chain data and you want something every 2 seconds, that's generally okay for a lot of these like hosted providers like QuickNode. I think you could pay $50 a month and it's pretty generous. What we've ended up doing is these situations where you really need to make that many calls, you have to run your own nodes. So that might be, fairly unusual, at least in the beginning of a project. But a lot of the time with caching on-chain data, we found that it was more of a hassle to build this entire like data engineering system to ingest all of that data. With simpler like off-chain things, yeah, it works really well. So an example maybe we'll look at if there's time, but is this trading agent. So that will ingest a bunch of on-chain data, but we also have a lot of off-chain trading indicators. And that the API limit is just too restrictive to make a call for every single person that wants it and every single time they want it. So there what we did is we'll cache all these recent requests, but also make it really known to whoever's going to be using the system that's like, hey, if you're using this data, it's not going to be a live API call at every second. You might get a version that's a few minutes old. So yeah, definitely feasible. I think as long as people know about it, then it works well. Some practical tooling, if you're working with on-chain data, something that is great is called Cryo. And this I'll share a link for as well. So this is great because it will extract blockchain data and then store it in a Parquet file for you to access later. And what's great about this is that you can define where are there examples? Yeah, so say we did logs block 16 to 17 million. If during that process you encountered some error and didn't get 16 million.1 that certain block, you could run the same exact thing again and it wouldn't fetch everything over. It only fetches what you're missing there. And say if we wanted block 16 million on, you could leave out the 17 million. Then whenever you ran this script, it would just fetch the new blocks. So this is really helpful for on-chain data. All you need to get started here is like some RPC endpoint. And you have to toggle the rate limits a little bit with this because you'll like quickly saturate this or saturate the node's capacity. But this is great for fetching on-chain data and caching it if that's what you're interested in, right? Okay, so Hackathon, why we're all here. The idea for this is to create agents on this app that we built specifically for the Hackathon. And how this came together was initially we're going to release this kind of builder playground as kind of a preview of this release next month, but we ended up adding some new experimental functionality for everyone here to work on, which we're pretty excited about. So yeah, we put together this app, and if you're familiar with GPT builder, then this will be very similar. So what you have is kind of specific versions of these models and then systems built around them for a specific task. And you can see with the most popular ones, there's a ton of conversation. People really find some usage in these more specific applications built with the model. So what we did was build this version with blockchain features integrated directly. And this is the link, which everyone can see. If anyone has an issue signing into that, let me know. Everyone should have access, anyone with the link. And we'll run through kind of the features and maybe we'll do a couple examples here as well. So once you sign in, you can see these few agents that we've built already. This test machine does like smart contract testing. We have an on-chain explorer, which will allow you to query on-chain data. So you could get like the TVL of certain protocols. You could see balances for address. And behind the scenes, what that looks like is just a number of these functions defined that the model can choose from based on the query. And then in these sections, we have frequently used and then all agents that anyone has created here, which you can make them public or private. So let's look at this creation portal, and we'll go through each of these fields and then maybe do something specific here. Name and description, this is just what you'll see in the app. You can think of this as the name people will see. So on the left-hand side, we have something like USDC buyer. This doesn't affect the model's performance at all, neither does this description, just what people see. This instruction is effectively the system prompt. So here's where you spend the majority of the time making modifications and testing what you'll actually be building here. This can be quite long. We have a number of different models to select from here at the bottom. Welcome message is what people will see the first time they use the agent. So it might be like, hey, welcome to USDC buyer agent, describe the functionality in brief, and then like if they need to provide anything or know anything specific, that's a good spot for it to be. Prompt examples would be the example responses, which will appear right below or right above the text input. So great examples of how you see the agent being used there. The models, so this is for the LLM that will be handling everything for you. This is a little different than what we do on the back end, where we have some code generation models and embedding models doing other things. But this, you can choose for any of this. You don't need an API key. You can do all of this at no cost, of course. Knowledge bases, so if you've seen like building RAG systems before, this is our version of that, which OpenAI does as well. We'll handle everything for you. So you upload a text file, then we'll process everything, create the different chunks that the model can accommodate, embed everything, and then when a user comes to search, we'll automatically query against this and use it in the prompt to the model if it's relevant. We have this network selection. So right now, Base is the only market or only chain we're deployed on. Coming soon, we'll have other chains as well, though. And then this is where things get really cool. So the plugins, and I say plugin and tool interchangeably, and function. I should really decide on one, but they all effectively mean the same thing. In a lot of these, it's some API call and then maybe some processing or formatting against that. So this predefined set of plugins that we have, the first one is Uniswap. So this is great to include some swapping functionality in whatever agent that you're building. Right here, maybe we'll try this example. We're kind of tweaking, making one tweak to this today, so it may not work, but you can approve the tokens to be spent and then swap all in this chat interface. And anyone who's using the app will connect to Browser Wallet and be able to see. Yeah, so just to do with the site, to sum it up, you can create any agents you want here. So the result of this, which I'll show in a second, will be some specialized version of a ChatGPT style interface. You can chat with any of these agents, and then based on the plugins you select, they'll all have different functionality. The kind of like bounds of what you can do with this are not really limited because we have a plugin that allows you to interact with any contract on chain. So if you deploy a contract, if one's already deployed, you can interact with that directly in chat and allow users to do that really easily as well. So, instead of building out some entire front end for your app, now people can interact with just the contract in a really accessible way. We have plugins for social media too. So Twitter and Farcaster data. So the example you might think of for a trading agent would be, you could consider some of this data, if the sentiment of tweets from this person is positive, you can include that in the decision to swap here. You can fetch real-time data that way as well, which is cool. Nexandria, DeFi Llama, Transpose, these are all, we're calling them like on-chain data plugins. So if you need to fetch balances, you need to fetch transaction history, all of those would be really relevant. Yeah, right, great. So if you want to build a RAG data file and reduce the hallucinations, all you would need to do is construct this text file, which I can show an example of in a second, and then we'll handle everything else. So yeah, just construct the text file of the information you think is relevant, and then you can upload here. And yeah, I'll do an example of that right after this. And we have image generator from Stable Diffusion built in as well here. So you'll see in some places we're automatically generating images for these agents. You can include that here as well. Portfolio is another on-chain data one to get the balance of addresses. We have search and scraping. So in the case where, if you're building something that relies on real-time data or real-time information that you can access just from some web page, you could use one of those to fetch that. This contract interaction is the one that I mentioned earlier. And this one I think will probably be the most interesting for a lot of you. If you want to read on-chain data, if you want to interact with a contract, you can select this. And within each of these, we have individual functions. So if you need the ABI for something, you can do that. We have view-only functions, so like a read method from a contract. If you want to just call that without submitting a transaction on chain, you can do that. Call contract method, if you're going to submit a transaction as part of that query, that's what you would use there. Yeah, any contract address or any contract deployed on base, you can use that there. And yeah, Foundry and general purpose are the last few. This general purpose one you won't see. This will be hidden shortly, and it's included in all agents. It's just a memory function. And then Foundry you may not use very much here. This we use primarily for deploying new contracts. So if as part of your workflow a new contract is created, you would use this Foundry plugin, but otherwise you shouldn't need this one here. And then we have a private and public toggle, and that's it. You can choose multiple plugins here, so you can, if you require on-chain data in Google search, you can of course do that. We have some limit there, but I forget exactly what it is. If you run into that limit, let me know, we can change it. And the other thing is this plugin creation. Right now, this is controlled by our team. So if you want to create a new plugin and, as part of your process, it's easy enough for us to integrate, we're definitely open to doing so. So if you wanted some random API that we don't support now, let us know. And in some cases, we're able to support that. If it's like a single endpoint, it's really quick for us to do. I think we had one more, or yeah, there's one more that you'll also see soon, which is like a trading indicators endpoint. So that would give you like what you see if you use TradingView, all those different indicators in addition to prices, which prices are available through Uniswap or like historical pricing through Transpose here. So back to Ryan's question about RAG, this is like the simplest example. So here's some text file and it just says, I'm thinking of a number. Incredibly naive example. What we would do is, okay, let's say the name of our agent is guess the number, description, we're going to guess a number. And now we'll just say, act as an agent that guesses the number I'm thinking of. So of course, this text file, created this morning is not going to be in the model's training data. So how would you actually access this? The welcome message will say, we'll just say, hey, we don't even need to prompt that. And then in our examples, we'll say, what number am I thinking of? So we don't have to type that later. Our model, might as well use the latest. The only difference between these dated versions and then without the date is that the versions without the date point to the latest available model. So I like using these fixed date versions just so you have a little bit more control if there's a new update of this 4.0 model that comes out. You don't have to retest with that update. But otherwise the functionality should be the same there. And then this is the knowledge base example. So that text file, the same number.txt. We'll just upload this. Okay, great. And this all happens really fast. This is something we were actually really happy with. If you uploaded a textbook of information, it would still process quickly within a second. So you can upload a ton of data here if you have something that is relevant for this. The kind of step you want to take at this, or the work that you want to do at this step, is really about curating that data set. So when you involve or when you have a bunch of data that's not necessarily relevant to your task, then some of the results are not going to be as great, and you might even get more errors when you see that. We have behind the scenes some similarity threshold implemented. So if there's nothing similar to your query in this document, then nothing will be returned there. But it's still best to filter that as you can. So this, we're not going to select any plugins. This again, you won't have to do. We'll make this change. We'll keep it private for now. And then we'll deploy. Perfect. So now, okay, great. So we have our prompt here. We'll say, what number am I thinking of? And we should get a response here with the number from that document. Again, this is kind of like a silly example, but you can think of this as, whatever information you think will be relevant to the user, you can include here. This can be new data. This can be specific data about whatever your use case is. Something that we do often is, say we're swapping tokens and we want to maintain some list of verified like names and symbols to their contract addresses. Rather than like making the model go out and search for all of this, we'll just maintain this document. And then anytime we can do a quick lookup there, and it works really well. Okay, this looks right. 3, 7, 4, 8, yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, good job, GPT. You guessed the number. Yeah, let me know if there's questions about that. The kind of more interesting examples will involve these transaction plugins. So this one we were just modifying now, so we'll try it out and see if it works. All this test agent does is swap USDC or swap ETH for USDC. Let's take a look at some of the details here. So we can see in this prompt that in this case, I want to handle like as much information behind the scenes from the user as possible. Kind of the generalized version of this might be, oh, we're just going to give it Uniswap plugins, and we could allow like users to specify these contract addresses. But in this case, like the experience of, okay, just swap USDC for ETH, I think is a lot easier this way when you include this in the system prompt. Ultimately, that will depend on your use case though. So yeah, we'll write some prompt here. You'll go through different iterations of that. Here, like when the order of the plugins matters, it's nice to specify that in the prompt as well. So this Uniswap plugin has 3 individual functions. First, we need to get a quote of the price so we can show that to the user. Then approve the tokens for spending on Uniswap, which is a contract interaction that they'll see in the browser wallet. And then third is that separate transaction to actually swap the tokens. And all of this we're pretty clear about here in the prompt as well. That's something that we definitely have difficulty with in the system where you're specifying a number of tools. If they're sequential, it can be difficult to handle when you only have like one, or if you have like an LLM chain style interaction here. If we're just defining one chain and saying, okay, here's 10 functions, sometimes getting the models to pick them in succession is tough. So that's where something like defining multiple chains comes in well when you know it, or fixing that tool choice that we saw earlier. If that first interaction, you always want to use this tool, that's a good use case to specify that there. And okay, some welcome message, great. And then our small prompt here with a very small amount of ETH to test. We'll select the latest model. In this case, we don't need a knowledge base. We're specifying everything in the prompt. A case where you might want this could be, like the general purpose swapping agent. Like if you wanted to be able to swap any contract address by name, then specifying like data on the contract name or the contract address and token names could be beneficial because you have cases like, if you just search tokens with the name USDC, you're going to get a ton of results. How do you know which one is the correct one that people might want? And then we select our Uniswap functions, which is the same as what we defined earlier, approve, swap, and quote. And yeah, that's it. So let's try it out. And this, I'm expecting part of it to work and part of it we'll see. So this will be a good test. One important thing with this is that any of these plugins that require a transaction, you always need to make sure your wallet is connected here. So if you're using this and see some issue, it's always good to check if the wallet is connected. So we'll say, oh, and we didn't see our welcome message. So I think, yeah, we may not get this to work, which is okay. So we say, great, let's get you started with your swap. Can you provide the address? Yes, we can. Copy this. And this is part of the current system, which I really don't like, is having to specify this from address. We've connected the wallet. This should auto detect here, but the feature just wasn't ready for this hackathon, but that'll be here in future work. Okay, great. We've gotten our quote. That looks reasonable. I got pop-up in browser wallet to approve that for spending, so I'll do that. And okay, great. We've got this message on approval. And yeah, so this is a bit of eager, I would say, messaging on the LLM side. Right now, this is in a separate window, so you can't see this, but I just got this separate transaction to swap. So here we're saying this transaction hash, this must be for the approval itself. Yeah. So here we have a bit of an issue where the model is saying, okay, yes, the swap has been executed on this hash. Everything has actually been done, but it really hasn't. Only this approval, which is the first of two that we need, has been done. Now I'll approve this other transaction in the browser wallet, which I apologize, you can see the little one up here by the fox, but not the pop-up. So I'll confirm that. And then we'll go back here and we'll take a look. And we have our pending swap now. So this should be resolved by the time you start building. Kind of cases, the problem here is that there are two transactions. And this coordination between, okay, have you submitted the transaction? Has the transaction been included? There's some delay here, so that's why. But great, now we have our swap. We've done, okay, yeah, perfect, 0.001 and 3697. Let's see how far off our quote was. Okay, perfect. We got a little bit more. We got, yeah, fraction for, yeah, a little bit more. And great, yeah, that's it. So this flow works exactly the same for the other plugins that work with on-chain data. So if you specified an interaction with some contract, eventually the user will get this browser wallet pop-up and be able to sign there. And yeah, this part about building 10 agents, that's a lot, but it is definitely easier than it sounds. So yeah, don't be too intimidated by that. And then yeah, functionality, creativity, that's how you'll be evaluated for this if you choose it. Great demo, we're done. And yeah, this we went over. This is the same or very similar prompt to what we used in that swapping example. So this is really important. Part of this hackathon app is being able to test. And you can see what's in the web browser is much more limited than what you'd have in your IDE, being able to step through and debug everything. So it's important to kind of check at each step when you make a change and think about where exactly things have been failing. So in Ryan's knowledge base question, if you've defined 30 pages of documents and uploaded that, it's good to go through and pick a few questions that are contained in that document and this is the answer you expect. Very similar to the number thing. And yeah, think about different combinations of the system prompt you're defining, but also questions you envision users asking, those welcome messages that you see there, all of that's great to test together. When you start building more complex applications with these systems, it's really, really important to have some testing framework. And the great thing is it's also easy to build that out as you go along. So what we've taken to doing is, we're working with some model. Each time you send a prompt, we just add it to a Google Sheet, and then quicker than you think, you end up with like 50 or 100 examples. So you can evaluate the tool choice. So say, if your questions are about weather, you expect this weather function to be chosen. And then each time you make a change to the prompt or change to the model, data set, you can rerun that evaluation script and have detailed metrics on everything you're doing. And yeah, make sure the wallet's connected. If you decide to work on this and have questions, we're here for support, like ask in Discord. We're really excited that people are going to work on this and are eager to help. So yeah, let us know. If there's some persistent issue that won't go away, we have access to some logs that we can look at. So if you just can't get through something, and in Discord maybe we're trying to assist but didn't, if you have a URL with this session and user ID, send this along and we'll help debug as well. So yeah, quick FAQs. I know we're almost at time, so I'll be quick. OpenAI models on the back end, we have some open source models. We have DeepSeek, which is a great code generation model. And we have some embedding models and sentiment classification models as well. Or not sentiment, excuse me, the zero-shot classifier models, which we use for sentiment analysis. So those are really cool because you define the passage of text that you wish to classify, and then you also define the categories that are possible there. Makes it a lot more versatile. Yeah, knowledge base, just construct a text file, spend some time curating it so you have the relevant information there, and then we'll handle everything else. If you want some API, some functionality that's not in the app, ask us. If it's a simple endpoint, it's easy enough for us to do. If it's something that's more complex, we can talk about it also. So the generalization of this and what we I think all think about when we think about agents in general is we're thinking about autonomous systems. So once we've defined the goal of the system, it goes out and handles it for us. We don't want to be sitting here signing transactions in the browser wallet all the time. This is something that if you use Foundry and try it out, it becomes really clear how powerful this programmatic interaction is. You can create 50 wallets and send 50 transactions at the same time instead of trying to sit here and do all of that in a browser wallet. You can deploy 100 contracts. The functionality there is really unlimited, and agents are really well suited to handle that for end users. And this is the release that'll come out next month, is this entire protocol for autonomous agents. So we'll have kind of these three components: listening, evaluation, and actions. You can listen for new blocks every 2 seconds, make some decision based on the information in that block with or without an LLM, and then take some action, which may or may not include a transaction. So that I think is really, really exciting and would be a lot more fun to play with next month. The design space then becomes huge because you're really creating some agent, some bot for any purpose. And all these blockchain tools will be tightly integrated with that. And yeah. So I think this is useful no matter which projects you decide to work on for the hackathon is, think about how people will end up using the work. I think a lot of the times where we go wrong is we'll have some idea and think, oh, wow, this is really cool. Yeah, it makes great sense. But then you kind of lose track of it. Wait, how is someone supposed to use this again? What are they actually going to do with this? So it's always good to check in with yourself there, evaluating the systems. Yeah, I would say build some simple testing data set as you go. It's easy and really pays off when you start making changes. And then if you choose to work on this, what do you think a later iteration of this might look like? What would that autonomous version look like? For everything that's created in the hackathon, we definitely want to kind of port these over to this release next month. We're or there's monetization and a bunch of other things possible there. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And yeah, that's everything. Good luck. If there's anything that you have a question on for this project or for anything else, or any links, please let us know. I'll share this entire presentation to...
You can, by the way, share with me, and we will then add
perfect.
it to our dedicated hacker pack. So you can share with Yasin at Encode Club, and I will make sure that it's added. We have a dedicated space for all of these resources. I will just quickly add it. I'm just going to check if it's public. Yes. Okay. So for those of you that are watching the recording, and those of you here in chat, we will make sure to make this presentation available within the hacker pack, so you will be able to go through the slides one at a time as well, and have access to all the links that Zane have already shared. Other than that, a quick reminder that for those of you, one thing that if you end up building on Spectral, you will see that when you end up submitting your project, you will specifically be asked for your address, because this is going to be the way that they will be able to identify what you've managed to build, what your agents look like, and what you've managed to achieve. So for all the other bounties, it will be just regular submission, but for the Spectral one, you will have to provide the address that you use to create your account, and the agents, and this is the way that they will then inspect what you've managed to build and the agents that you've came up with. If you have any questions, as I said, please navigate to our Discord. We have representatives from pretty much all teams, and even in the cases where we don't have representatives, we make sure to then follow and forward your questions to the proper people, so that you get to have adequate technical support. A quick reminder for those of you that are still figuring out what to build, by the end of this week, you will have to send us the idea that you're planning to build on. Again, this basically is a huge help for us and everybody involved in the hackathon to know who's building on what, and to try and provide you with all relevant information that you might need, so that you can actually build the thing that you have in mind, and maybe even win some prizes. So don't be shy. Make sure to share what you're planning to build. We have amazing people, as you can see, just like Zane, that are just here to support and just share, their brilliance with all of you. That is everything on our end. Tomorrow is going to be a new day for workshops, so make sure to tune in as well. And yeah, any closing words from you, Zane?
No, just have fun. And yeah, like I said, if there's anything we can do, let us know. And yeah, hope to talk to you soon.
Amazing. Thank you all for this, for being here, and an amazing workshop, Zane. And have an amazing rest of your day. See you all. Bye.